Well, good morning. Welcome to the April edition of the OpenLineage monthly meeting. You all see my screen, right? Yeah. Okay, so just a reminder, this meeting is recorded. So be on your best behavior. We'll be posting it on YouTube after, along with the notes on and all the links will be on the LFAI and data wiki. And we start the meeting with going over the room and do a round of introductions. So if this is your first time in this meeting, I'll go in order on my screen and ask your name, so you can briefly say who you are, why you're here, and if there's any topic you'd like to discuss, if you have a question, or if you have a blocking issue with OpenLineage. Of course, it's also okay to just be a fly in the wall and just be here to listen. If there's nothing, you don't have to be on the spot. If there's nothing you wanted to discuss and you just want to be there, this is, of course, welcome as well. So I'll start on my screen. Top left, we have Michael.
Hi, everyone. Michael Robinson on the community team at Astronomer. I coordinate these meetings and happy to be here to support all things OpenLineage.
Next is Pawel.
Hello, Pawel. I'm software engineer at Getting Data and committer of OpenLineage and Marquez.
Harel.
Hi, I'm engineering leader at Astronomer for developer experience. Looking forward to see what we have on the agenda today.
Maciej.
Hey, I'm Maciej. I'm a software engineer at Getting Data, and I will tell you a bit about progress that we're making in Airflow.
Julien.
Hi, I'm Julien. I'm on the products team at Astronomer, focused on developer experience. This is the first time I'm attending one of these, so I'll probably just be fly on the wall.
Welcome. Shiri.
I'm Shiri Cabral. I am a product manager for Lineage tools at Calibra.
John.
Hi, I'm John. This is my second meeting actually, but the first one was like probably over a year ago. Just been following the project for a little while and have some more bandwidth to get involved. I'm a big data sort of back-end engineer and happy to be here, fly on the wall status.
Good. And Anirudh.
Oh, hi. I'm Anirudh. I'm a data engineer at Grab, based in Singapore. So this is my second time attending as well. Just want to learn more and be a fly on the wall. Yep.
That's good. And let me check, I'm not missing anyone. And I'm Julien. I'm the project lead at the LFA and Data Foundation for OpenLineage and chief architect at Astronomer. And today I'm going to talk a bit about the static lineage discussion, which is in the agenda. So first, just quick reminder, in between meetings, the base page, so there's the meetings page. For people who want to attend, you can just click a link and add it to your calendar and be reminded of the monthly meeting and how to attend. In between, the best way to communicate is through the OpenLineage Slack. You can use the bit.ly link to join the Slack and communicate here. We also have a mailing list, which is being used mainly for announcements, a wiki page where we keep track of the links to the recordings of this meeting, as well as the note. And Twitter, LinkedIn are also for announcement about new releases, new features, things like that. And the YouTube channel has the recordings for this meeting. And we also have so the agenda for today, we'll start with a few announcements and then we'll do the updates about the OpenLineage in Airflow progress. And Maciej will tell us about this. I'll talk a bit about the static lineage discussion and formalization we had and where we at, and then we talk about the releases. There's a couple of demos, and then there's open discussion. Open discussion is always, you know, any topic, any question you might have, we're happy to discuss it. So to get started, any question on that? Anything you wanted to add to open discussion, wanted to bring up now, or otherwise I keep moving? Okay. So I'll start quickly with the announcement. Michael has been organizing a New York meetup next week. So some of us will be traveling. I'm traveling there. And so you're welcome to join. I think some of the topics we'll have there is discussing the static lineage and evolving the spec. I also had started a doc for run events that are not for recurring jobs, that are more ad hoc things or one-off runs or that people are using. So there's some discussion on evolving the spec, that it's a great way to have interactive discussions. So it's happening next week if you're on the East Coast. And we can have more lively discussion. It's easier than on Zoom. And more details are on the blog, and we'll post the link there. So on OpenLineage.io, you'll find the blog and the detail there. Upcoming, so I'll be speaking at the Data and AI Summit about the cross-platform data lineage with OpenLineage. So raising more awareness, how you collect lineage across various projects like Spark, obviously, and DBT and Airflow and so on, and Flink and other projects like this. And recently we had 2 talks. So Ross, Pawel, and Maciej all spoke at the Big Data Technology Warsaw Summit. And I think all those talks are recorded. You can find them. In particular, Maciej and Pawel spoke about the column level lineage aspect. Oh, thank you, Michael, for posting the link in the comments. And I also spoke at Data Council, talking about more about the open source dynamics, how to grow, to build a standard in open source, if you're interested in those topics. This is also recorded. I don't think the link has been published yet for Data Council, of the recorded talk. Last month, we did a meetup during the Data Council conference, collocated with it. And we also had a meetup in Providence, Rhode Island before that, to enable discussion in the community and making progress on evolving the spec and so on. And the next iteration will be in New York next week. And so we'll be trying to do some of those. So sometimes on the West Coast, sometimes on the East Coast, or different places, or collocated with conferences to enable more face-to-face conversations. Any questions on this? If you want to help organizing one of those, you're welcome. Okay. So updates, we'll start with Maciej talking about the Airflow AIP 53. AIP stands for Airflow Improvement Process. So we submitted a proposal on Airflow to move the OpenLineage Airflow integration to Airflow proper, which is going to simplify it and make it more reliable and easier to improve. And so this has been approved earlier this year by the Airflow PMC, and Maciej is going to tell us about the progress of the project. So I'm going to release the screen to let you show what you want to show.
I kind of don't have presentation. I just wanted to talk for a few minutes. So our goal in a like medium time for OpenLineage is to make the operators responsible for their own lineage, because they are the data producers, data consumers. They know what data they consume and produce. So this is what we want to achieve. But in order to do that, we have to have more infrastructure in Airflow. And so we divided our like development process into 3 phases. And first phase is basically getting what we already have, an OpenLineage Airflow library in Airflow, but in a way that follows Airflow's processes and like the coding style, tests, and, basically make it fully compatible code-wise with Airflow. That includes removing a lot of things like compatibility between Airflow versions. Them we will be like there from Airflow 2.6 plus, and that means we can like remove a lot of legacy code. So we are in this phase, and we merged like our like first big PR that moves most of the core infrastructure there with like 2,500 lines of code, and more coming, of course. Since then, we can basically do more work in parallel, because like Airflow is a Apache, a big library, and basically the processes, code reviews are much more thorough, and they require more work from us because we want to get a big piece of code there, right? So there are a lot of discussions. We had like 150 comments and discussions on the first PR. We've resolved all this. We've merged the we are opening new PRs in parallel with like different migrating particular extractors, adding tests, and this is where we're at. And the second phase will be work on other providers. So basically implementing the OpenLineage methods and making sure they are well tested within their own tests. So yeah, talk with Julien, maybe not a talk, but presentation for Airflow community, which was like 2 weeks ago, I believe, and it was recorded. So Julien, maybe you have a link to it somewhere nearby.
Yeah, Michael put it on
covered all of this in
on the OpenLineage YouTube channel with the recording for those talks. So,
oh yeah, it's
yeah,
in
so
the
we
channel.
can actually we keep going. I'll post. Here we go. This is the recording of and so since then, yes, the first PR, which was the biggest one, has been merged. So big congrats,
Yes.
Maciej, on this achievement, and everything else is, you know, more incremental. All the details are adapting it in there. Any questions on this? So if you're using the OpenLineage Airflow integration, you know, it's going to be.
I have a question.
I'll go ahead, Maciej.
When it will be ready, and I can answer also. I don't think it will be ready by next month's release of providers, but we will aim for the next one, I guess. So The maintainer of providers at Craive is doing like a release each beginning of each month. And so yeah, May is unlikely for, I believe, but July is more likely, especially that after the big PR, we have a much better like cadence of reviews since they are much smaller.
Yeah, I think the first big PR was the big item, and everything else is easier. A lot of smaller PRs, easier to do. Yeah, and it's going to make the integration much more tightly integrated in Airflow, much more stable, and it's going to make it a lot easier to get much better lineage out of Airflow after that. And hopefully this is a poster child, right? This is the end goal to OpenLineage is to be a spec and each project to implement against it, and not the other way around. Cool. So the next step
Now I have a question, just to be clear. This doesn't change the actual functionality. You still have to be using operators, the right operators to get the lineage from.
Yes. So
not yet.
Maciej, maybe you want to.
But maybe so. Our like goal is to have a first like operator that is using this in the first release. We'll see what we will actually do, but we're looking at Snowflake operator.
Perfect.
So yeah, we want to have like one, and to make sure that everything works and nothing breaks, and then go full steam ahead with hundreds and thousands of millions of operators covered.
Yeah, so the big benefit is, yeah, the operators themselves can support it, especially if people use custom operator in Mix. It's easier. Any more questions? Okay. So I'll move to the next. So the next updates, and actually I was supposed to make more progress on this, but I didn't. So we talked about static lineage support. So what we've been doing, what I've done is I separated a more like functional definition of exactly why we're doing we have this discussion on static lineage metadata emission, and we've been talking about how to evolve the event spec, especially. So there's some of the details on Maciej's doc that has been discussed on how to evolve the event to achieve this. But this doc is more focusing on the use cases, why we want to do this, how to represent it in the model, and keeping track of the static lineage. And so what I will do next is turn this Google Doc into a proposal on the OpenLineage repo, and make it easier for people to comment on, and we can refine the definition of this. So to do a quick summary of this discussion, so OpenLineage at the moment has run events, so it captures transformation as they are running. And so you may have a SQL query running, and maybe it's scheduling Airflow, and every hour is transforming from one data set to the next. Like if we take a very simple use case, and it captures the runs, and as part of those runs, it captures information that is specific to the run itself, like how long it took, for example, some aspect like this. But it's also capture information that's more static toward this, what's the schema of a data set. So it's going to keep track when the schema changes, but the schema doesn't change all the time, or the inputs and outputs of that query doesn't change all the time, right? So in other cases, we have static lineage that we know about without necessarily the transformation running. For example, we can know about the definition of a BI dashboard, or we can know about the definition of a logical view in a database or a warehouse. And we can know of the lineage of those things independently of whether they have run yet or not, right? So the goal of this static lineage capture is to capture all those notions of lineage that we know about, even though they may not have been acted on yet, right? And it includes, you may have deployed a job that is copying data from one place to the other, and we know that statically, even if it has not run yet. Or it can be, you know, a view that is defined. And that helps complement the lineage and being clearer on how we collect this information. It's still, OpenLineage still stay focused on capturing everything that is deployed, right, and exist physically, right? It's not design lineage per se, like it's not like a definition that has been entered manually, but it's capturing actual artifacts that have been deployed in production. And so the goal here is to enable, so the way we're capturing that is to enable a notion of capturing the job and the dataset metadata and the existing facets, but outside of runs in a more static statement about, here's a dataset update. We just capture that this is the schema of this dataset, or the owner of this dataset has changed, and you can capture that as a facet without having to have a run necessarily. And same thing for, we may know that a job exists and it reads from a dataset, right? So even though it has not run yet, or we know about it outside of runs, like for example, in the logical view. So this document goes in more of the details, and actually let me post this in the chat. So, the right window. And so this is the status of this. In parallel of this, we had a similar discussion on extending the spec for jobless run events, which is, so similarly, it requires evolving the events we're sending, because currently the run events capture recurring job of, we require a consistent name for a job that recurs, that for example happens every hour. So it could be a schedule in Airflow, could be a DBT job, but something you run every hour or every day. And we capture runs as being part of a recurring jobs. And similarly, this is missing some of the things we want to capture. For example, ad hoc queries, whether people are using Jupyter notebooks or a client on a warehouse or things like that. Those things are one-off ad hoc events, and they also transform data. They might be producing data that is depended on by other things that might be automated. And therefore, we want to capture them in the lineage, but we don't necessarily want to pollute the job namespace by one-off name that would be generated, right? Or like user queries, right? So this is about capturing all those one-off non-recurring jobs, ad hoc queries, and this is really useful also to understand how a dataset is used by people for ad hoc querying, for example. They may not be depended on by automated dashboards or things like that, but they might be used by people, right? So those are the type of use cases we can capture. It also enables us from capturing metadata from things like query logs that may not have the information about the recurring jobs, even though they are for recurring jobs. But like the other metadata we capture on the jobs, for example, can connect the two and enable reattaching the metadata we get from query logs to an actual recurring job after the fact, right? Because, for example, in the Airflow SQL operators, we usually collect the query ID. And even if we don't have the full lineage at the time it's scheduled from Airflow, we might connect the query ID, have another integration that gets more accurate lineage from the query logs or other metadata from warehouses after the fact. For example, in the Snowflake integration, with the access history, we can extract OpenLineage from the access history. And since we have the query ID on both sides, then it can be reconnected to the actual recurrent job after the fact, which enables better lineage and those things to extend each other. So those two use cases are the main use case. And so basically the proposal is to make the job name mainly optional and for capturing things that we don't have a recurring job, so we can't provide an ID. And that requires also some changes on the market side for storing metadata. So those are the two ongoing proposals for updating, and let me post also this. And right now they are Google Docs that you are welcome to comment on and suggest improvement to those spec in like use cases and why we're capturing those things. And I'm going to turn those into presentations, into proposals on the OpenLineage repo. So if we look at the OpenLineage GitHub, we have the proposals mechanism, which actually this one. Well, this is where we add proposals, and that's how we get reviewed and approve proposal to add to evolve the spec in significant ways to evolve things like this. And the documentation for the proposals is here. We need a README in this. Here we are. So the proposal process was itself submitted as a proposal to capture this. Here it is. So this is our process. And so I'll follow that to get to the next step. Like Google Docs are convenient for getting early feedback and being more fungible. And then we move that to the proposal process inside of OpenLineage. Any question on this? So and so I just wanted to say thank you, because like there are people on this course, including Sherry, who's been very kind of pushing us to say, hey, they're missing things in the spec. How do we formalize that? So I wanted to say thank you, and I hope to get your feedback on this to get this in a good shape. So next is a recent release, and Michael, you want to go?
Yeah, I'm going to quickly give some highlights rather than, just drone on about our release notes, which you can easily consult on the OpenLineage repo and our new improved doc site. But we have had 2 releases since the last TSC meeting. And in 0.22.0, we added a new facet for capturing specific Spark properties. And in the SQL parser, we added support for 3 new statements. We added a public interface to the SQL integration as well for providing typing hints. And in the clients, we added custom header handling in Java and a new method for creating the Python client from a dictionary. A change that you might want to be aware of is the environment variable for disabling OpenLineage is now case insensitive in case you need to disable it as part of your development process for some reason. And we now have a namespace value in Spark that's more conformant with the spec. And then briefly, OpenLineage 0.23.0 was just released today. So this is hot off the presses. We haven't even done the publicity for this yet. And we added 3 more commands or support for them in the SQL parser. added support for snapshots, which represent type 2 slowly changing dimensions. Also made the custom column lineage visitor interface public, so you can more easily customize your column lineage in the Spark integration, and cleaned up the code in the Airflow integration. Want to thank all our contributors for their contributions to these releases, and a special shout out to Allison Suarez, a new user who requested OpenLineage 0.23.0, an off-cycle release. Anyone can request a release in the general channel. So those are the two most recent releases.
Nice, thank you. Yeah, that's the benefit of keeping the main branch always shippable. It's really easy to make a new release if someone needs a bug fix urgently. So I don't think I've seen Danny in the attendance today, so I'll skip the demo part. Probably we can have it to next time. And I'll move to the last item, which was Pawel's caching support for column lineage.
Okay, perhaps I can share my screen, because I do have a tiny demo. Let me know if you see my internet browser. So yeah, I can start with a personal opinion that Spark and OpenLineage integration is just amazing. And it's because it has a solid foundations behind that were created before I joined the project. It's because we are able to extract lineage from a logical plan, which is a direct representation of what Spark is going to do when processing data. And this allows us to extract everything we need and create great OpenLineage events based on that, and detect all the outputs, all the inputs, and somehow try to find out the relations between the inputs and the outputs. So we're just in the middle of the engine that is processing data, and we are able to extract the information we need. The other great thing about it is that it's just, I don't know if you see that I'm selecting the lines, it's just 4 lines of configuration that you need to do to turn on the OpenLineage collection for Spark jobs. These are like include the OpenLineage jar, let's send the events to the backend, and that's all. And let's declare extra listener. And so even if you are an ops guy or your organization uses Airflow to trigger Spark jobs, you can do it once in your Spark operator or as an environment parameters, and the OpenLineage should be collected. So within a demo, I do have an empty Marquez instance running locally with no data sets. And yeah, the beauty of this is we get data from the logical plans. And this beauty actually leads to some problems. And the problem we are going to discuss today is cached data sets. So caching is a pretty popular concept for Spark jobs. Imagine that some computation gets repeated 50 times over a single job, and we don't want to repeat it. We want to cache its results in memory or store it in local in disk within the Spark context. And that's why the caching was invented. And the problem here is when caching a data set, we do have a separate logical plan that is used to compute this data set. And which means that when we later use the cache data set, we do have like 2 logical plans that are used to generate single output from the same input. And when evaluating a lineage, we need to somehow merge those 2 logical plans to extract information from both of them. And this is what happened within the PR we're demoing today. So in the context of column level lineage, we're able to merge those 2 logical plans so that even when we cache a data set, we know how the inputs are affecting the output. So in this demo, we are creating a simple data frame of like 2 columns, col 1 and col 2, and write it as a table. Let's call it dataset A. Yes, and then we create a cached data set. We know that it's cached because we use cache action that keeps the data set in memory and allows us to be reused later on. So whenever we reuse this data set, we are not computing it over and over again. It's somewhere stored in the memory. And based on this data set, we can create a data set B where we simply add those col1 and col2. Yes, and after that, we can go to Marquez and see if our data got collected. Yes, we do have some commands, and the input is dataset A, then the output is dataset B. And then we do have a column lineage section tab, which allows us to see that for col4, we do have two input fields pointing to col1 and col2 of the input dataset A. So it's not a huge demo, and it's not perhaps super interesting, but yeah, there was kind of a gap because caching datasets is extremely popular when writing Spark application. And when we missed the column level lineage here, it was a huge gap that we filled within this PR. Thank you.
Thank you. So any question on Pawel's little demo?
I'm just curious, Pawel, were there any problems with assigning job names or namespaces in merging the logical plans, or if I understood your presentation?
Yeah, so we always get the job name of this second logical plan. We just merge the first one with skipping its name, and the namespace is global for the whole Spark notebook and the Spark job.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no other questions, the last item of the meeting is the open discussion. So is there any other points someone wanted to raise, or items, or you wanted to share what you're doing with OpenLineage or anything? Give it another awkward silent minutes, and otherwise we'll wrap up the meeting.
Actually, I just have like one doubt. So actually, we are using OpenLineage to capture column lineage from Spark. So one thing I observed is basically, if I want to capture some environment variables from the Spark cluster as well by setting the config, I noticed that I'm actually getting 4 events for every time a table is saved. So 2 start events and 2 end events. And the only difference between the 2 start events is that one of them contain the environment variables and the other doesn't. So I just wanted, and similarly, so for the complete events, but none of the complete events contain the environment variables, so they're exactly the same. So I was just wondering, is this behavior expected, or is this like a bug, or?
It smells more like a bug.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just like sometimes Spark creates kind of artificial jobs internally to do certain things, and so that we've been skipping some of them, I think, Pawel, and
Yes,
simplify a bit the events that are being sent.
yeah, we observe such a behavior for when integrating with Delta. So when saving data to Delta, there are a lot of events, and we have implemented kind of filtering to filter out some events that did not contain any meaningful information. They were just some internal Spark actions that from the OpenLineage side look the same as any other action. Yeah. But so that was related with Delta, and we filtered them, and yeah, definitely would like to look at them if you say it's related to environment variables, because it shouldn't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because if I don't set the environment variables config, then I only get two, like one start and one complete.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, so the basic model in Spark is you have a Spark process, and within the Spark process, every time you write somewhere, you have an action that's either going to write or overwrite or happen, and so we capture each of those actions as individual jobs, because in Spark it creates a job on the cluster that runs and writes to the output and stops, right? So when you have multiple steps like this in Spark, it will create multiple jobs, and we capture them as individual OpenLineage job, and they all have the same parent, which is your Spark process that contains everything. And so in the OpenLineage model, you have this hierarchy of the parent job and the subjobs, but unfortunately, Spark reuses this kind of common abstraction for things that are not touching data or are not actually running distributed jobs at all. And so for that, we have to filter out, and sometimes it creates spurious events.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. On that, so we're going to wrap up the meeting, unless any other.
Okay, I'll go again. Oh, okay.
Oh,
Sorry.
go ahead, go. We have time.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure. So actually just one more thing. I think so basically we have a use case where we wanted to capture column lineage for when V2 session catalog was being used as well. So I think I raised an issue OpenLineage as well. So just wanted to ask whether like is this like in the potential roadmap down the line, or yeah.
Sorry, I didn't get it. Like for
For V2 session.
Could you link the issue
Oh yeah, okay.
in chat?
V2 in that, like Spark V2? No.
So this is like a internal Spark catalog actually. Yeah, this one. So basically the use case is that
Go ahead.
sorry, yeah. So the use case for us was basically I think under the hood Delta catalog, if you're using like Delta catalog, it transfers some things, and internally the catalog manager transfers it to V2 session catalog. So for like those events, basically we were not able to capture lineage, or rather it wasn't supported by OpenLineage.
So it's a different type of data source, right? In that sense here, right? Is that? I think for this, it would be very useful to have an example job, if so that we can reproduce and understand better when that happens. If you if you have kind of an example that's not sharing anything of your proprietary information.
Right. Yeah.
And we could look into it, or we can help getting it there. So yeah, I'm not too familiar with this use case. So it's in the Delta, right? We have a specific test cases for Delta. I know we've been doing that for Iceberg. Do we have for Delta as well? I'm sorry, there's more question for Pawel.
Yes, we do. It would be really helpful if you put some tiny code that can replicate this, because I don't know where V2 session catalog is used. Is it some abstraction within Spark open source, or is it only Databricks or Delta offering? Because at any time, anyway, starting with a failing test is great to implement the feature.
So I think I wrote the feature like getting the data from catalogs, V2 catalogs earlier. And the reason why we support like Iceberg and Delta is because we can find their implementations in open source, and they are like the most popular users of this interface. And for V2 session catalog, I couldn't really, you know, use it in a meaningful way. So I think we have a like a implementation of it that just, you know, throws error or logs something. And I was hoping that if somebody uses it, he will see the log and come with us with useful information how to, you know,
Also, is
use
it
it.
like
So
specific?
you're that person, and yeah, and you can help now. with this.
All right. Okay. Yeah, sure.
Okay. Sounds good. I think, yeah, if we can have more details on how to reproduce this, we probably can fix it, right? It's probably just knowing what case to add, this case to add in there. Okay.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yep.
Awesome. Okay, anybody else wanted to share or ask a question? Thank you on that. Then have a great rest of your day or night, depending on your time zone. And we'll see you at the next meeting. And then in the meantime, you can follow up on Slack, right? So like Hani wrote, you can follow up with Maciej and Pawel on Slack for the details or on the issue you posted. And otherwise, like, feel free to reach out more. See you next time.